Hello everyone, this is another Hydra tutorial, the Hydra intermediate tutorial number 3 on feedback plus layering, because we have already visited feedback on the first video of intermediate tutorials, and in the last one, the second one, we explored how to do layering, and we're going to combine them in this video as I promised before. And if you're not familiar with those ideas, techniques, functions, please visit the previous videos first. There's also 11 videos on beginner's tutorial that I recommend if you haven't watched or if you are new to Hydra. But if you feel ready, let's go and dive into the world of feedback. So let's see, I'm gonna just at first I have to change myself into this small format, and we're gonna go back to the browser. We live in the browser. Funnily, like this one I opened randomly, as you know, if you open Hydra editor, it shows random sketch, which I recommend to explore a bit, just changing numbers, just like how I did in the very first video. Sometimes it's nice to it's actually refreshing, and also at this point you might have ideas to decode some of the programs or code. For example, this one is actually quite interesting. We explored how to use mouse input, mouse X, mouse Y, well, mouse.x to be precise, and this one's made by Olivia, and actually it does feedback, which is a bit different from how I'm gonna explore. But basically, if you know already how to do feedback, you can, well, in the first video we said using the blend function, and she does use modulate instead of blend, but basically using O0, so it's the previous frame, and use the previous frame to modulate the image. So always feedback comes with there are different formats, but basically O0 or the previous frame, if you're using O1, then it might be O1. This comes into the new out. We are outputting to O0 using O0, so that's the feedback. We're always using it, although it doesn't necessarily make feedback, but to make feedback you need to use O0, let's say, if you're using O0 as output image, or if you're combining O0 and O1, it might be O1, but it's something that uses the previous buffer or texture. And we stick to this idea basically, and how I'm gonna start today is to recap how we did in the first video of intermediate tutorials, which is, okay, maybe I'm gonna use the camera to show myself out. So the very basic version, and I need my FaceTime. Hello. So I'm now double, and the way we did, so just like I said, we're gonna use O0. So it's implicitly written here that it's, well, implicitly using O0. Now I'm explicit about using O0, which doesn't change anything as output, because the default value of out is O0. But you can use O1, O2, which you need to specify which buffer to render. It can be O0, render O1, then it's going to be O1. But we'll stick to O0, and for the whole video, I think, unless I need to explain some sub buffers, or I mean, not sub buffers, but other buffers, how it's intertwined. But I don't think I will do it today. And so what I'm going to do here is, again, I need to use source O0 to make a feedback. And the way we did in the intermediate tutorial 1 is to use source O0 blended with source S0, which is the new image of myself, in this case the webcam, and output. And this won't really work well. It might look a little bit blurry on your screen if you try it, but I don't know, in the recording it might not be very visible. But basically the way it works is that you make a small number here. I mean, it can be 0.1, but it can be, yeah, it's already a little bit blurry. 0.01, then it really started to be like a ghost burnt into the background, because it takes time to burn and takes time to unburn, I don't know, to disappear. So it might be like better like 0.05 or something. Then it's not motion blur, but it's technically not, but it's kind of like motion blur that you can see like the ghost or after image of the movement. So this is like a way to do like very simple feedback with simple code. If you are a bit overwhelmed, I can also add some new lines here and there so that this is a sandwich, S is source O0, out O0. These are the buns. And what's inside is a blend function, which has another, well, open sandwich, because this one doesn't come with out. So inside blend, inside modulate, inside layer, it's always like open sandwich that we have. It can be, like invert. Like I can inverse the color, which will end up with the webcam inverted, but the feedback itself doesn't really change its purpose or function. I don't know how to say. If I want to like do something on the feedback image, I have to start doing, for example, scale here. And just remember that if you are working with feedback, you always try with a small number, otherwise it will just explode. And in this case, it has to be like not 0 with a small number, or like no change with scale is 1. If you do scale 1, it doesn't change anything. Small number, by small number, I mean that to make no change and make little change, and let's see what's gonna happen. And then it's gonna like start to like expand somehow. But this invert is only applied in the first, well, like the image feed that I'm feeding, like a ketchup injected into a sandwich. I don't know if that's a good metaphor, but like slowly injecting this by the rate of 0.05. That's a way of seeing it. And I wouldn't do invert here because it's gonna like flicker, I think, or it might not. It might just go gray. But it's because invert is like really harsh operation to the color. It basically inverts the color. So if I want to do something here with color, I would just do something like maybe like saturation. That's a good one. Saturate. And again, just like scale, saturate with no changes 1. This is something that you have to try, because in some cases, like brightness, like 0 is like no change, but saturate, contrast, these kind of like multipliers are no changes 1. So I want to like saturate a little bit, maybe like this. I'm just guessing, and you see that my image is getting really saturated. Okay, this is actually really cool. I don't know how to describe, but it looks really fun. So this is like already like fun things that you can do with only with the knowledge from the first video of intermediate tutorial. But then we want to combine this with the layering. So let's see what we did with layering. And I'll just clean up the code a little bit because I want to do something with this later, and I'll comment it out, control slash, or even on Mac it's not command, it's control slash, to make it commented, so that if you execute the whole code, control shift enter, it will just ignore these ones, and you can always come back to this and do control slash to put this back into the code. So that's really handy. And what I'm going to do here is the layer. I'm going to like overlay myself on OSC, and somehow it stopped. It's because of my browser, so I'll just refresh the page, and I did restart my computer this time, but it's not helping. Anyways, let's just do it like this. So I want to overlay myself on OSC, but if I just do S0, then it's just myself. There's no OSC because I'm opaque. Well, I might not, depending on what kind of light you're using. If it's X-ray, it might not be opaque. I don't know what I'm saying. But for example, one way to crop this out is, well, like one way is like Luma. Then I can see the dark part of myself. Well, it turned out my sweater is dark, so it's now transparent, and you can see background. But another way to like cut it out, I mean, this is there are like different options you can just explore, but what I like is to use mask with a shape. So now we have sandwich of OSC and out, and inside that we have layer, and there's like open sandwich, which has the source S0, and inside mask we have another open sandwich with this shape, and it's executed. I know it's getting confusing, but I can also add a new line here so that you see this kind of hierarchy of the sandwich empire. Now it's triangle here. I don't know if it doesn't really mean anything, but if you like more like oval, then I can do like 999 or whatever number, like big enough number so that it becomes like a circle. Well, oval. You can always correct it with scale and so on, but that's explored already, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, so this is layering, and probably you can already guess how we're going to do feedback with layer. I mean, we have this code like side by side, well, top and bottom. Probably like just take a moment, how would you do feedback? And the answer is, well, basically you just, instead of OSC, we're going to use source O0, and we're going to like layer on top of the previous texture, and let's see what's going to happen. Is it my browser crashing again? Well, actually no, and probably if you're following this tutorial and using the code editor, which I highly recommend, it's almost like a must. Just watching this video doesn't really help much. Please write along with me, and if you need to pause the video, do it, and write the code, execute, and try different functions. That's like quickest way to learn. And okay, so it stopped. Why is it? Because it's normal behavior, because we're using this previous frame and overlaying my image here, the circle me, on top of the previous one. But the rest hasn't changed because we didn't tell what to draw outside myself, because we're masking with the shape, but there's nothing changing outside. So what can we do here? Maybe this is the moment you want to like pause the video and try out because I already explained how to fix this problem like a couple of minutes ago. So just try out what you think would make feedback. And I assume you tried it. I'm going to say the answer, which is to do something here after source O0. And just like the example I did, what if you do scale, and again, has to be small number, close to 1, and try it out. So now it's making this funny thing. I wouldn't call it effect, operation, whatever, because it's like this is like basically beyond like effect. You cannot just say it's a visual effect. It's doing something every frame and expanding myself into the pixel space. So this is exciting. Like this is like super simple code. I mean, we have nested sandwiches in here. It might be like if you just see this code without like how to decipher Hydra, it might be overwhelming. But at this point, I think you have some clues like what this is doing. So basically, source O0 is the previous frame, and it's scaled up, just like how we were like doing with this blurry version of feedback with source O0 and blend. We use scale to expand the previous frame, but instead of like blending onto like all the part of the texture, I'm just slapping my image in the center. But because of the scale, it's like expanded every frame, and it's almost crisp. I like this kind of image, not too blurry. I mean, blurry image is nice sometimes, but I like this one, except that it's a little bit dark and around myself. I don't know, it's not the lighting. It's because shape 999, the default parameters are 0.3 and 0.01 or something like this. If I do it, it doesn't change, so it must be like default is something like this. And what it means, 0.3 is the size of the shape. So it's kind of the diameter, let's say, of the shape, or yeah, is 0.3, like 30% of the half of the space, or whatever. It's kind of like covering 0.3, so 30% of the space. Well, 30% times 30%. Anyways, it's like a ratio. Oh my gosh, it's stopping again. I'll just do it again here. And I might switch to Chrome. I don't know, like maybe Firefox is not the best with M1 Mac. Anyways, so basically shape 99 is the how many sides we have, and this is making basically a circle, and then 0.3 is the size, and well, size and side and size, and 0.01 is the blurriness at the border. So it's adding a little bit of kind of like fuzzy blurry edge at the but we can't see it because it's 0.01, but it kind of like becomes a little bit more obvious when it's starting to like do feedback, because it's basically expanding this blurry edge with a scale, and somehow it end up a little bit darker. So how do we fix it? We just put 0, and it doesn't have this kind of border like shadow thing anymore. So now you see the continuous color, and this is like already making some kind of slit scan type of, well, I would say like effect, like a visual effect, but it's computing to create this slit scanny visual effect. What is slit scan? This is interesting question. I was actually not really sure, so I opened the Wikipedia page. It's from photography, and actually like there's interesting one, like for example, like a person's head rotating like this. You can do a similar thing with like photo scanner, like, you know, which comes with a printer, and you just like put your face, and while it's scanning, because what happens with the photo scan is that it's not going to like take a photo in like one shot, but it scans through. So it's like almost like going like every pixel, like pixel by pixel, and you can like move along that, you know, line of scanning. And so actually your image is like deforming while it's scanning. So instead of like if you're taking photo like one shot, this is not possible unless your face looks like this. But if you're moving along, like if the camera is like scanning one pixel by one pixel, and if you're moving at the same time, you can also do something similar with like a panoramic photo with your phone. If you have like a camera app, and if you have the option for panorama, sometimes, you know, like you can do some like long cat or something when the cat is like moving along with you. I think the camera is like, or the camera app is getting smarter and smarter, and it's trying to like eliminate this kind of artifacts, but you can be like creative and do something like this. And this is basically like a same idea as feedback. Now it's doing something similar, which is like pushing these pixels in space. So instead of we're scanning through the space, we're kind of moving the pixels around. And by the way, you should like definitely pause the video and try out like different color, or like well, probably you shouldn't do invert, but what kind of color do you want to like is it saturation that you want to explore? Do you want to like do scroll X, scroll Y, rotate? What parameters would work with the feedback, and what kind of mask? Like there are like lots of things. Also, you can explore with Luma. There are like lots of things you can explore just with this template, let's say. So try it out, and if you feel like, you know, coming back to something more like I'm gonna try to recreate slit scan in a more like how to say authentic way. I know there's like also a slit scan example from Floor that's a Hydra example, but I'm gonna do something a bit more like traditional way. So let's see how it's gonna work. But basically, I'm gonna just keep this format. I might just delete this one, and I'm not gonna do the scale anymore. So as I did before. It's not OSC anymore because OSC is no longer there. If you evaluate like this, then it will just like freeze the image at the time of Ctrl-Shift-Enter. And what I'm going to do is, instead of like, so we're just like moving source 0, but we can move the, how to say, the shape around so that the entire image is updated somehow. And to do this, I'm going to use this trick with shape 2. What is this shape 2? This is like impossible shape, like shape with like 2 sides. So it's like, we can imagine what triangle is and what is like rectangle, like 4 sides or 3 sides, but whether it's 2 sides. In Hydra, it's possible, and it just becomes like this long bar or stripe or whatever, strip or whatever. And it's actually, well, you can just like, you should also test how it looks like just with shape 2. And it's just like this. And what's nice about it is that if you like, for example, 0.1, it's basically setting the thickness of the shape. So if you make it super small, then it becomes like almost like a line. So this is the easiest way to draw a line with Hydra, by the way. And I'm going to do this with this here. Oops, I have to delete this one. And now you can see me as a line. It's a little bit silly, but this is basically the first way to make it a slit scan, because now what slit scan does is that we want to like sample just 1 pixel or 1 row of pixels at the same time. And this is already doing it. I mean, it's not 1 pixel, you see the thickness, but then you can also calculate, what would be 1 pixel, depending on the height of the image. But, it's an approximation, just like how I use shape 9 and 9, it has to be like really big number if I want to make a real circle. But it's always like, approximation is like, okay, most of the time. Okay, so I'm going to start with this, but then, I'm already doing feedback. I'm using 0, but there's nothing happening around me. If you want to do like feedback, you can also do like, scale again. But I'll just do another approach, which is to move the mask itself. So what if I move this shape? And we already seen it, how to do it. It's very simple. Basically, just scroll Y. And here, if you have watched and remember how to use scroll Y, it takes 2 arguments or parameters. First one is like more a static one that you can just like, spot like where to move it. And I'm not going to use it because it doesn't really matter at the end, because we're going to use the second parameter, which is the speed of the motion. And this, like 0 is no motion. So again, just like how we do feedback, let's start with something small. But actually, in this case, it's not so crucial to make it very small. But let's see, like 0.03, something like this, and evaluate. And now what it's doing is it's like scanning the image, like S0, and only updating that part. So if I move, you see that I think it's a bit glitchy because of the computer. But here it's a little bit too slow for a demonstration. This might be like nice for installation or whatever you want to show, but I might speed it up a bit, 0.0, well, even like 0.2. And you can see that it's almost like how photo scanner work, right? It's just like sampling. Now you get the idea, I hope. So, and then like while I'm like moving my head and explaining, it kind of makes this crazy image, which is quite funny. I think it's really fun to explore. Anyways, so yeah, that's it. And maybe your homework is how to make this like vertical. Like now it's, well, is it vertical? Well, the motion is vertical, but now the line is, the eyes are really crazy. I might make this shape a little bit smaller to make it No, now it's a little bit jumpy. Anyways, so how do you make it like this line now is like going horizontal, and it's so distracting to talk watching this, but yeah. So now it's like the scanning line that goes like this, but how can we go make it like this way? So the line is vertical and the motion is horizontal. So maybe you want to pause the video and try it out. You have to add one function and change some things, but basically one function needs to be added and one thing has to be changed from this code. So, assuming that you try it out, I'm going to explain briefly. So, just for demonstration, maybe like I'm going to take this part out and show you what it's doing. And this is always, good to try. If you get confused, just take a chunk of code and put it into out and see what is actually doing. I do this quite often, actually. And what I'm going to do is basically I want this shape to be like vertical. So I just want to rotate it. And Hydra uses radian, so math.pi, but divided by 2, which is going to be what I want. But now I don't want to scroll it in the y direction because now it's not going to change anything. I just want to scroll it x direction, like this. And what we could do is, you can write it into the code back again, but you can also, if you're lazy, you can just like copy and paste here. Just be careful with the parenthesis and do it. So it's doing what I wanted, and let's see what happens if I move. Yeah, doing some funny things. Great. Is it actually just glitchy because of my computer if I reload it? Yeah, well, it's a little bit better, but anyways. So that's it. And this is just like a starting point, and I'm not gonna like explain too much about like you should do this and that, because you should explore how to make it interesting for yourself. This may not be like always the init cam. You can use a screen, or you can use the video with init screen, for example, or it can be YouTube video. You can import it with init screen, or you might want to use some more abstract shape. What happens with it? What happens with OSC, Voronoi? What happens if you don't use mask but Luma? Or what happens if you use mask with different shape? It can be OSC or something. And also you might want to add, for example, like what happens if you do saturation, or I want to go a little bit wild with like hue. And always, if you're adding here, just start with small number, and I think this will go a bit crazy. Yeah. So these things like you can explore like a lot. Now it's going really wild. Some people might like it, some people might not like it. I don't know. I personally, it feels a little bit too much. But you can explore a lot. What happens with scale? What happens with scroll? What happens with this and that? We have tools already, so it's up to you what functions you combine. And not always like not more is not always better. So you might want to take something out, or you might want to go back to the blending, or you might want to add more layers. There are like so many possibilities with the tools we have. So that's it for the video. For the next one, I haven't had any idea yet for the intermediate tutorial, so please comment down below if you have some wishes, if you want me to cover some topics, or if you have questions, or if you made something interesting with the code, please let me know. Or you can post it in Discord group, Facebook group, and so on. So I'm really curious to see what you create, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.